today we are meeting with my daughter, Olivia. Say hi.
Hi.
And she is the reason that I started on this journey, because she's my second child. And when she was 2.5, I was a preschool teacher and she couldn't cut with scissors. And as she got a little bit older, she couldn't draw pictures. And so that was alarming. I don't know if it's the best word choice, but it was definitely something I noticed was different, that she couldn't do, that the average person her age could do. And that is because her fine motor skills were not developed. So I started a journey to figure out why she wasn't able to do these things. And it was a long journey. It took almost 10 years. She was 12 years old when we finally found out she had dyslexia. And that was just after moving to Texas. And as I've mentioned lots of times before, so if you've heard any of my recordings before, if people know what dyslexia looks like, it's much easier to determine what it is. So she was in class for only 1 week when her teacher said she's dyslexic. And they didn't do testing until the end of the school year. So her teacher said to get her into special ed with her ADHD. So that's what we did. And before we started this interview today, Olivia and I were talking about what she remembered and doesn't remember. And so she was sharing about her experience in special ed. So we'll talk about that a bit. But so Olivia, tell us, or share with us what you remember as a child about being dyslexic. Your reading, your spelling challenges, or your experiences.
I don't really remember having much of a struggle or thinking I had much of a struggle as a child. I didn't do a lot of my own reading. You would read stories to me and I would more so listen, so I didn't need to, other than like little picture books that I could easily read, or at least in my mind I thought I was reading. But I don't think I really noticed that I had dyslexia until I started taking classes and people started telling me, you're dyslexic and you need to learn differently than a kid who isn't dyslexic. I knew that, I don't know how to word that other than saying I knew to cheat on someone because I didn't know the answers and they did.
And it was first grade when I was volunteering in the classroom and I saw her cheating off of the person she sat next to.
I just thought it was inventive.
And I mean, that's a dyslexic, we have coping mechanisms. So that was your coping mechanism as early as first grade.
Mm-hmm.
Was you were paired up with a partner, so why not get the answers from the partner since they were able to do it, I assume.
Yeah. Yep.
So Olivia, share with my audience what you remember about when you first were identified with having some learning challenges before you started your dyslexia classes, or once you did start your dyslexia classes.
I remember when I first was told that I had dyslexia, that the school I was in didn't have a dyslexia program at that exact school, and so they put me in special ed. And after about, I think it was like 2-3 days of being in special ed and realizing that that was not where I needed to be, I wasn't needing the help that the special ed kids needed. I just needed a different way of learning what the teacher was teaching the other kids.
So, and very often I do tell parents that that will happen most of the time in America when someone brings their dyslexia diagnosis to the school doesn't know what to do with that. They stick them in the special ed classroom. And unfortunately, they're not set up to use an Orton-Gillingham-based program, which is what you as a dyslexic person.
And they're not set up to sit there with you and work with you what you need to do. There were other... when I was in middle school and I had dyslexia classes, when I had my other classes, I had the opportunity, if I had a test, to go to the special ed room where it was a little quieter. But a lot of the time, trying to get the help going to that room, they didn't have the amount of staff available to help the kids who were coming who weren't there on the regular. So we didn't necessarily get the help we needed, rather than just sitting in a room not with our peers. So,
which, I mean, that in itself can be beneficial, because I remember the anxiety I felt when I would take a test and I'd hear all the pencils going down and I was only halfway done with my test.
And that's why I think they had us go, or gave us the option. But I think it's one of those things that everyone is different. Everyone's dyslexia is a little bit different, and everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses from dyslexia. And mine wasn't necessarily being afraid of, or like the fear of not finishing in time or everyone else finishing before me, but not being able to understand what I was reading and reading it wrong and then getting the wrong answer. And unfortunately, they didn't have a teacher who could sit down and read my whole test to me like I needed.
Well, that just made me think of your driver's test.
I failed the first time because I tried to read it myself, and I think I got a good amount right, but I think the things that I couldn't read and that I read wrong is what really knocked me down. And that was for my permit test that I couldn't pass. I couldn't pass my permit test. And then when we got the accommodations and someone to read it to me, then I passed it, no problem. But yeah, so exactly that. And the same thing with my cosmetology test. Yeah, I had someone read it to me, and she, her first language was in English, and so she was asking me what some words were. But even just having someone to help me with some words that I really couldn't get, and that they could help me sound it out while they tried to figure out what the word was, helped. Just any sort of it just maybe it gave me ways of like sounding it out when maybe I wasn't thinking about it because I was stressed about my thinking or whatever.
Well, and I think that was one of the best things, even though you ended up not really having a lot of help with the person reading it to you, was that you didn't have to stress out about having to read it to yourself. And you didn't have to take the written part and the practicum the same day because of your accommodations. So you can continue to get accommodations throughout your adulthood. You just have to sometimes teach people, which, I mean, even during the school years, you sometimes have to teach people what it is that your needs are, or your child's needs are.
Have someone advocating for you.
Yeah, until you can advocate for yourself. So, what do you feel as an adult? Do you feel like your dyslexia is a challenge in some areas at this point in life?
No, not as much. I think I always use the little tips and tricks that I learned from dyslexia, and I always find that I am sounding out words, which I never did before doing dyslexia classes and learning how to actually figure out how to spell out a word and stuff. And yeah, I think that, you know, there's going to be struggles, but with technology nowadays, it makes it a little easier with everyday stuff, and unless you are going into a career with a lot of math and a lot of reading, then yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so did you find that there was much of a difference between when you first started tutoring in a larger group setting? I mean, not larger like school. There was what, six
There was 4 kids, yeah.
Versus when you and I tutored one-on-one.
We got more done when it was one-on-one. When it was the group, I think, at least when I first started with dyslexia classes, the group, it took a little longer because we were waiting for everyone to be there and everyone to grasp the lesson before we moved on to the next one. So with it being individuals, I was able to kind of speed through it and work at my own pace, and especially because it was you, my mother, who was tutoring me, we were able to, you know, kind of get it done. I think we did it every day.
Probably three days,
yeah,
maybe 4 days.
It was a good amount. But so,
yeah, great. Is there anything you want to share with parents to help them understand dyslexia or understand their child?
Don't force your kids to read if they don't want to. You're just gonna push them away from wanting to do it. Let them go at their own pace. I think a great thing that you always did for me was get books on tape, or you got me the book and the book on tape so I could follow along. Just finding different ways to help your child without shaming them or making them feel like they should be reading, or
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Olivia, for doing this with me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.